something that I originally heard from a Christian apologist, and uh, and it's just another way of looking at this dilemma, at this issue of if God is all good, if God is all loving, then why do we have horrible things happening in the world? Why do we have suffering? Why do we have evil? And I want to kind of put a little bit of a different spin on this. Now, you've already been told that, God didn't cause evil, and we did that, right? We brought evil into the world, not God. But then the other thing is that he talked about in this is this idea that David Hume had, that if God is all powerful and all good or all loving, okay, so that's the dilemma. So if God is willing, so he's good, right? He's loving, and able, he's all powerful. Then why is there evil? Why is there suffering? Because if God is able, if God is willing to end all suffering, to end all evil, but he's not able to, then in Hume's words, he's impotent. He's not all powerful. If he's all good, then he's not all powerful, because he would stop evil if it was in his power to do so. That's the assumption, is that God would stop evil and suffering if he could. If God is willing or is able to end suffering, but he's not willing, well, then he's malevolent in Hume's words. He's evil. He's not good. So either way, he's either all good or all powerful, but he can't be both. He might be neither, but he can't be both because of the presence of evil in the world. And then he ends by saying, if he is both willing and able, then whence comes evil? Whence comes suffering? Which means if he's all evil, all good and all powerful, then why is there evil? And why doesn't he get rid of it? So here's the dilemma then. And we're going to talk a little bit about that word dilemma. What does that word mean? Yeah.
Dilemma is kind of like a struggle. Like a struggle or kind of like a back and forth kind of problem.
Yeah, so that you're exactly right. It's a struggle or a back and forth about a problem, right? And so the prefix die, right? DI, what does that stand for? Two. So you have this dilemma, you have this issue, and it's between two things. The dilemma might be two really great prom dresses, and you're trying to decide between the two, right? But it's these two things. So, but in our case, right, the dilemma is God's goodness as opposed to his power. That, namely, as Hume said, that God cannot be both all good, all loving, and all powerful. So in theological terms, then it's a dilemma of God's love and his omnipotence. But who says it's a dilemma? Philosophers do, and unbelievers do. But does it have to be a dilemma? Are God's love and God's omnipotence the only things that are true about him? No. What else is God? Besides all loving and all powerful, what else is he? Yeah, he's omnipotent, right? He knows everything. Do we know everything? No, we don't know everything. So now it's no longer a dilemma. It's at least.
You mean omniscient?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I did mean that. Thank you. Sorry.
Oh.
Yep, you're right. Thanks. So now it's at least a trilemma. What else is God? He's everywhere. Yep. But I'm thinking about a specific one. I'm thinking about all wise. Right? He is all wisdom. Right? So now we have a quadlemma. It's not just between two things. It's between three or four or many attributes of God. So let me ask you this. If God is all powerful and all loving and all wise and all knowing, might there be some things that that happen that he has good reason for, but we just don't understand? Is that not possible? Not only that we don't understand it, but we can't understand it because our minds are not infinite. They are finite. They are limited. So I'm going to tell you a story that kind of illustrates this. Lane was about 2.5 years old, and my parents took our whole family, all my sisters, their husbands, all the kids, on a Disney vacation, and it was a land sea vacation. So we spent a couple of days on land and a few days on a Disney cruise. If you're going to go on a cruise, go on a Disney cruise. I'll tell you what, I'd go on if it was just Jeff and me, I would go on a Disney cruise. It is so much fun. But so the night before we were to leave, Lane had a cough. And I was a little bit concerned. So I thought, you know what, before we go on this trip, I need to make sure he's okay. So I had to take him to urgent care because it was evening. And they checked him out and they said, you know what, and it's January, so it's cold here. And they said, the warm air, the moist air, he's going to be fine, just take him. And we're in the air, I don't know where we are, somewhere over the United States. And I don't know why Jeff and I were put in different seats, but we were across the plane from each other. And all of a sudden I hear this barky cough, this croupy cough. I don't know if you know what a croupy cough is, but if my kids got sick, and especially if Lane got sick, and he got sick a lot, he ended up with this croupy cough. And from across the plane, I hear this croupy cough, and I look over at Jeff. And Jeff is looking at me. I'm like, oh. Now, Lane didn't sleep that whole time. He's 2.5. He needs to sleep. And so we got to the hotel, and the first thing I did was set up the pack and play and put him in it. But I stayed with him because I was concerned. And then all of a sudden, I hear this thrashing in the porta crib. And I realize Lane's not breathing. And so I grab him up, I take him into the bathroom, I turn on all the hot water in the bathroom because I know that the best way to get rid of croup is to get into a steamy bathroom, and then after you do that, take them to a freezer and let them breathe in that hot warm air and then the cold air. But I didn't have a freezer; all I had was a bathroom, so I filled that thing with steam. And I don't know how I got Jeff because we didn't have cell phone. I don't know how but I got him, and we found out where the nearest hotel was. We got a cab, not hotel, the nearest emergency room was. We got a cab, and we went to this hospital. It's like a Disney hospital. It's Celebration Hospital. It's in Celebration, Florida, which is where Disneyland is, and it was like its own little, it's a small world thing. Yeah, it was its own thing. But we get there and they check us in, and he's having trouble breathing. And we wait and we wait and we wait. And finally, I went up to the front, and Jeff was mortified that I did this. We're like, my son is having trouble breathing. I think we need to get in there. And they're like, oh, so sorry. And, did a little song and dance. No, they didn't. and they take us into the back, and the doctors start working on him right away. And of course, he's 2.5 years old. He is frightened. He doesn't know what's going on. And they did some stuff with him, and then they walked out. And I reached down, and I think I kissed him on the forehead, or I touched him, or whatever. But he was burning up. And I said to someone, I turned and I said, he's burning up. And they came in, and he had like 105-degree fever. And they're like, we need to get fluids into him right now. And so they began to try and find a vein to put an IV into. But he was dehydrated, and they're poking and they can't find a vein. And this is a 2.5-year-old. And I'm standing over him, and I'm talking to him, and I'm, touching him, and the look on his face is like, why are you letting me, why would you do this to me? Why would you allow them to do this to me? And he was scared, and he was angry, and he was confused, and all of those emotions in his face. And all I could say to him was, baby, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. And that's all I could say. But I knew what Lane couldn't know. I knew that he needed this, that he was in critical condition, and the doctors had to do this to him. But Lane couldn't understand. We're Lane. Things happen, and it doesn't make sense, and we don't get it. But might an all-powerful, all-loving, all-wise, all-knowing God is able to understand. And as I told you yesterday, I'll take that over an answer, and he did. A God who loves me and stays with me in the midst of it, says, I'm so sorry. I'm with you. Over, this is what I have. So I don't know if you want to use this. You don't have to use it in your paper, but you can if you want to. But when someone gives you this dilemma, God can't be both all-loving and all-powerful. I think it's wise to bring in, but that's not all God is. God is also all-wise. He's also omniscient. And might he have reasons for allowing things that we can't understand? But someday we will, and it will all be worth it. Fact is, C.S. Lewis says, I've told you before, that C.S. Lewis says the first thing we're going to say when we get to heaven is, because it will all make sense. So that's what I wanted to say to you. And